Well, how are you? Good. Been busy? Always. Yeah, good. Yourself? Yeah, it's been good. Really good. Yeah, he's been through some.
Robin, you had that Boston news fire?
Good. Yeah, but not as much as I was, but yeah.
I didn't know you were there.
Oh, yeah.
I was sad. Thank you.
Okay,
first.
You can play at each other.
I did an extra like this year.
You have a sense of humor. That's right, absolutely. I think we're all here.
The only person missing is Sam, but he never responded. I think we have to keep it open.
Open?
You know,
Oh, okay.
we were to open first.
Okay. You want me to
You know.
you want me to open the meeting or close the door?
And then we'll go into close and then we can close the door. And then we'll open that.
So technically, we should wait till noon by the one, in case the public is.
The live stream is on, so I think we're probably okay, but.
Can talk about the lease for a minute or two.
So let's talk about the Canucks.
Yeah, there you go. You only have an hour. Yeah, that's right.
So I'll read the Jets and then Canadian.
Yeah, there you go. So the my watch is noon. There we go. I'll call the meeting to order and we can take note of who's present and who is not present. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest by anyone? There is none. I have a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the agenda. Paul, mover, seconder. Robert. All in favor? Approved. Thank you. We have a number of matters that need to be determined and discussed in closed session. And we do so because of the requirements of Municipal Act Section 239. Financial information that you can base secrets will be disclosed. Have a mover and a seconder that we go into closed session. Moved by Bill, second by Sheila. All in favor? We're now in closed session. Okay. I have the resolution and a secondary to adopt the balance of the agenda in open session.
Stephanie,
Stephanie, thank you. Getting a little bit older.
that's okay, me too, it's all good. But I remember your first and last name.
Thank you.
And everybody else.
You're my kind of person on the board. Good, thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? Yeah. All in favor? We're in open session. We now have a resolution with respect to the Stardust. May I have a mover and a seconder?
Especially before we close up. At the last EDC meeting, we were looking at funding for, it was the rusty cable, and then now we're doing Stardust. Is there sort of a strategy that Henry has in regards to the film industry? That's been, could be sent out and or discussed?
Just some documentation. We do have a dedicated individual to the film industry. And there's a distinct strategy about that Travis is pretty much getting that up first, so.
I've got a point person. Far more qualified. It'd just be really interesting. When we see ourselves 10 years from now.
Sure, we'll put that on the next board agenda. Right, I think we can probably do a quick overview if that's what interest the board. We're a little bit out of order. A mover and a secondary that is moving the resolution that EDC endorses a request from Stardust Picture Studios in the amount of $100,000 from CDF for capital renovations and recommend City Council approve this request. We had a mover, we had a seconder, all in favor? Approved. Now let's go back to the beginning of the agenda. May I have a mover and a second to adopt the minutes of the March 9th, 2023 meeting? All the way.
Sorry, I wasn't there. Apologies.
I was there.
Over. So, all in favor?
That's one we have to do.
Any declaration of pecuniary interest? I should have asked that first, I think. Any declaration of pecuniary interest for this line? We've already approved the agenda to the offer. New business updates. Tourism St. Marie. Travis?
Thank you, Joe. So I have two items on today's agenda. The first being a request for signature for the NOHSC change request form. This pertains to an agreement that was held with the EDC prior to it being incorporated with the city. There was a funding agreement specific to the marketing of the Agua Canyon tour train. NOHSC reached out recently. That agreement was set to expire December 31st, 2020. They recognized that due to COVID, we weren't able to spend all the marketing dollars. They're willing to extend it till March 31st, 2024, which is the end of their next fiscal. And we're hoping to get that signature so we can access additional funds. Tourism Sault Ste. Marie would provide the matching funds. So there's 21,700 that's required to access the roughly 13K. Tourism Sault Ste. Marie would pay all the invoices for that. So we would provide the matching funds in order to access that 13K, which would then come back to Tourism Sault Ste. Marie and would be applied strictly to marketing the tour trains. We just need a signature on that form so we can access those additional monies. Questions on that?
Have a mover and a seconder. Drafting the resolution that the EDC board chair signed the attached change request form so the security staff can access the many grant funds to market the Agua Canyon tour train, including the result of the EDC will pay Tourism Sault Ste. Marie outstanding $13,000 when received from others. Let's see. Move it. Bill, all in favor? Approved.
Okay. On to the second item. So the next one is TransCanada Trail funding. So similar story. Prior to the incorporation of Tourism Sault Ste. Marie, the not-for-profit, the EDC was the entity that the city transferred the municipal accommodation tax to hold. In 2020, we were able to access $500,000 in federal funding to develop the new mountain bike trails. The in-kind support was $167,000, which was drawn from the municipal accommodation tax. Through those funds, we were able to leverage an additional $40,000 in funding from Trans-Canada Trail, which is to go back into trail construction. At the time, there was a resolution passed that stated that once the money was accepted, it would flow through back to Tourism Sault Ste. Marie. And we're looking to obtain that $40,000 at this time.
Any questions about that?
Is this for additional construction on the Farm Lake Trail, or is that just something completed, this is additional project?
We've got an additional construction year plan this year, so a portion of it will go to the continuation of Farmer Lake, plus some additional expansion on the Hiawatha system.
Do we receive these funds?
Yes.
You're sitting in our. You anticipated that trail is going to be developed in the next 5 years further. I think the original plan had a lot.
Yeah, we've got a line of sight on some additional funding from some grant applications that we wrote last year. So I'm certainly looking promising that we'll get those and continue expanding.
Would it be time with the places?
There's one, so that one's being developed by the cycling club, but there is one grant application that would allow us to connect from the hub trail directly to Hiawatha.
There's no doubt that the money goes to tourism in St. Marie. There's no doubt about that. I have a mover and a seconder that we proceed to pay invoice. Is it 1D or IV? C73 tourism percent rate, the amount of $30,000 in money funds from Trans-Canada Trail funding of EDC. Mover and a seconder.
Again,
A seconder. All in favor? Approved.
Thank you very much. Love these kind of meetings.
Give me my money.
Let's skip item 6.3 for the time being. Let's go to 7.1 college. You want to
Yeah, Karen Madigan's here. She's the bookkeeper for EDC. And she has to go back to another meeting. So is there something we can address?
Yeah, let's deal with 6.2 then. Where EDC finance. We received a request from Timmins wanting the corporate minute book and the accounting information and close off certain accounts that were open as a result of a program that the city of Sault Ste. Marie was involved in through the EDC. There was part of the plan was that the cities participating each had to contribute $20,000 for certain items and costs. I'm just giving a broad general picture here. Make a long story short, the program was discontinued. Not all the funds were drawn down, and there were issues arising with respect to some aspects of it. And the last conversation we've had with respect to this matter is that two cities or two municipalities have not yet contributed their respective $1,000. So we're at the stage now where I understand EDC, Karen, Karen has done all of the necessary paperwork and accounting responsibilities have been carried out to try and collect the $40,000. Like that, things just about right so far.
Yeah.
Okay.
Keep going.
And as I understand, and from our executive meeting, that money has not yet been paid. Is that fair?
Right, so we have two communities for outstanding. One is St. Marie and one is Bedbury. So my understanding is that the EDF money, which is the source of the city's contribution, will come directly to EDC. It's not going to flow through the only EDC account. but we are still waiting for Sudbury's payment. So when Bill and I were talking about, you know, by all means, tenants can take over the bookkeeping. But we were hoping to get that payment in, finalize Federal NOHSC, because depending on what they deem eligible or perhaps not eligible in those final claims, we might need to use some of those funds to make EDC whole. So we wanted to do the final reconciliation, you know, with Federal NOHSC before we close the bank account and for the funds to tenants.
As of now, if I got it right, because this was before my time, that we have control over that bank account at this point in time. Is that fair?
It's ONEDC, the Ontario Economic Development Corporation, is a separate corporation.
Right.
So they have separate signing authorities. So I believe it's Christie, Rec, yeah, and I don't know.
I don't know if there's any-
It still says John. John still.
I have
We'll
to,
confirm that.
I'll have to look into that further, but I know that Christie is the signing authority on there, and then we had one from Christie Timmins, and we had one from Sudbury. So, they certainly can
So
take over the book.
if we close that bank account and we give that up along with the documents, then book, et cetera, we have a significant disadvantage in trying to get some money back into the coffers to cover any shortfall that maybe arises. Is that fair? Tom, Rick, fair?
Yeah, I do believe it's fair, and I think that the most logical way to proceed would be to get the accounts closed out first, receive the monies that are owing, get the books balanced, and then at that point, turn it over. So
I got
no
one.
liabilities left.
I got another email this morning. Being asked by.
Christie Marion,
And they're getting all the information on the benefits and so on. So I didn't have a chance to respond to say they have a meeting, but I'll respond after the meeting, so I can do the resolution.
So is this premature though? We haven't received any.
We're not doing that. The resolution is that we turn everything over once we get the money.
Right, I think what we want to do is finish the ITB, like, see what's approved, and then we can balance how much is coming from each municipality. We'll close that project off and then we'll hand it over, as opposed to handing it over and then still trying to finalize that. Depending on time frame, but
Yeah.
it may make it easier just to finalize the ITB first.
Just wondering if it's a little premature past completion. Getting one grand.
Well, we have to make a decision or a response to the group like this, unless they describe it. And it was basically saying, we'll hand everything over and give you the minute book once all the funds are in and final set of books are included. That's in essence what is being recommended. In other words, I don't want someone to take over the accounting function and the bookkeeping function, then come back to us and say, listen, what about X, Y, and Z? And try to restructure and review that whole set of entries and so forth. And give them a report. This way, we'll give them the books, we know what money is spent, who spent it, and where it went. It's much easier matter to account for it once you so much possession of all the records, etc.
So really there are two financial issues left, right? There's, are costs going to be reimbursed to us as part of the final reconciliation?
so that's part of the.
And that has been approved. And then secondly, what happens with the remaining funds? Because I thought they're supposed to be a surplus of about $68,000 after doing this accounting for.
Yes, we're anticipating a surplus based on, you know, what we think that Norm and NHC are going to be eligible. If there's any kind of adjustment around that, I wouldn't expect anything significant, but we just You just never know, right?
Is that going to be apportioned back to the EDC communities? There's six of them?
Five.
There's 5. I don't know what the conversations have been at that table too. Like, are they expecting the balances back, or do they want to keep it in the ONEDC account? And, you know, we can transfer it over to Timmins, and then are they going to keep it there for future potential projects? I don't know what their plans are.
I think it just, even if it's a nominal amount, it's something there needs to be a framework around it, right? It's $5,000 if they want to keep it fine, but I think that discussion has to be had, otherwise there's going to be that item always remains open, right? Around if it's 5,000 or 100,000, it's still a concept that has to be had up.
Yeah, and I think that's the understanding of one DC would be, and the request is to get those monies, and then if they need to be reallocated out or assigned to a new project.
Right.
Because, you know, there will be projects ongoing with one DC as they move forward, and they will need those access to the funds. They'll probably come back to the individual municipalities for more money along the way.
There's a related issue, and that is that we're of the understanding that the administrative costs, you know, whatever money it costs for us to have professional services in accounting, we should be reimbursed for that. And we want to make sure that we get some reimbursement for those efforts, and that's included in the final statement of accounting. Is that fair, Karen?
We were charging back my time on the ITV project. But just, you know, the ordinary day-to-day outside of ITV, you know, that has always been provided by the.
So the wording of the resolution, is it in consideration that our costs will be reimbursed to us? Simply, it says that upon receipt of outstanding final payments related to final approvals of IT project. Would that be enough to make sure we get paid, or do we have to wait to see if we get paid before transferring the records?
Well, I haven't considered the part about not being paid. It's
That was my first thought.
well, I don't know enough about the program. I haven't seen the agreements. I don't know the contracts, so I'm at a bit of a disadvantage in that regard. So, I mean, with every grant and government funding, there's always glitches and always compromises ultimately to be made with respect to these things. So I don't know enough about the structure of it. I know of the issues that arose from it, but that's about it. So, is
It's
there,
safe to say that we're not getting a fee for doing the ONDC. We're getting a fee for the ITB project, which is a project that's concluded now. And we had, it dealt with the defense industry in Northern Ontario. It was we had 2 employees, and they would go around and try to certify businesses to work in the defense industry. So now that program's finished, and we're finalizing it. But the only fee we're taking is administration fee for administering the ITB. We're not taking a fee for doing the ON EDC books. We just did that because we've always done it forever. So
my understanding was that we were involved in the administration or working through this program for the various communities in Northern Ontario.
yeah, on the ITB,
Yeah. And so if there's any issues arising from that administrative responsibility that EDC took on, then we should have all the records and all of the documents, the minute books, et cetera, to respond to that. So that's why the resolution is that resolve that Sault Ste. Marie EDC turn over all ONC bookkeeping records and responsibilities to the Timmins EDC upon receipt of outstanding and final payments related to the final approvals of the IT project. If there's issues that arise, we'll make the decisions on an ongoing basis to deal with those issues. Pending receiving of all of the funds in the account. That's the game plan. I'm open to suggestions as to anything else you may want to include in the resolution. Open to amendments. I don't hear any suggestions.
the request is really for us just to get back to the saying that, okay. So
At a particular point in time.
Why be so specific?
Well, there's something to be said with some level of certainty, if not total vagueness. What did I say? We're gonna turn it over to, I'm gonna say,
Once the ITV project.
So,
Well, it says a pond, there's a pond, we don't know what a pond is, right?
it's not a pond that you swim in. It's-
Well, it doesn't, it's not asking for a specific date. So
Well,
this
it
is,
depends on federal
Yeah.
financial approval, so we don't have a date on that.
That's right.
Well, let's go back to basic language here.
So we're
How about we have a resolution that says, now therefore be it resolved that Sault SSMEDC turn over all ONEDC bookkeeping records and responsibilities to the Timmins EDC when in lieu of upon, is that better?
Well, it makes more sense.
Or on the happening of receipt of outstanding and final payments related to the final approvals of UDB project. Okay, thank you. Okay.
And is it upon receipt of outstanding final payments, or are we potentially subject to some requests for audit after they paid us, and we have to have records for that, or? I just, are we certain as to when our role is complete?
Well, we're saying what it is. We're putting the deadline date, and that is when the money comes in, and we do the final set of books, and say, here it is, and here's the minute book.
You're coming upon one DC, whoever holding it. Absolutely, yeah.
So may I have a mover and a seconder for the resolution that be it resolved that the SSMEDC can over all ONEDC bookkeeping records and responsibilities of the Timmins EDC upon when receipt of the outstanding and final payments related to final approvals of the ITV project takes place. Bill moves, seconded. All in favor? Robin, would you make note of the change in the language, please? Thank you. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
We'll deal with this in college.
We've received an PDF request from Sioux College for the development of the Sioux College Center for Health Sciences. It will be a new 30,000 square foot facility that will support 100 additional students. I think their enrollment will put into about 700 in the health sciences program. Programming in the facility will include a new BSc in nursing, which will be a full degree, as well as practical nursing, health promotion, informatics, and PSW programs. The total project estimate is $29.4 million. Job creation, we expect 10 to 15 high-paying positions, which would include professors to administer the programs, as well as some of the IT professionals to support and things like that. The total amount of the request is $600,000 to be paid out over a period of 3 years at $200,000 per year from the fund. Other funders involved are NHFC, FedNor, MCU, which is the Ministry of Colleges and Universities, as well as the college significant cash inflow as well. Purpose of the monies will be used to assist in the construction of the facility. And we're seeking board endorsement to move forward with this request to City Council for EDF funding of $600,000 to be awarded in 3 annual payments of $200,000. Any questions?
In fact, it said it was expected to be occupants winter 2025, is that right? So those payments, if they're going over the period of 2025, in reality, it's going to be in the semester after. So if we
Well, you got
go-
23, 24, and 25.
and so the winter 2025 semester, is that winter 2025? So winter semester typically starts in February, right?
I would have to check.
Yeah, I was just curious, so is that meaning like, that's their goals to be open for that semester, winter semester? You know,
Or they think they're gonna build a $30 million facility and they're
I
gonna
guess,
have. They don't have the money.
well, that's what I'm wondering, right, the timeline, and almost as if, to me, it seemed like they'll build it, and then they'll get reimbursed afterwards, too. And they're deeming to have it opened already, which is great, I'm just curious the timeline.
Yeah, and I don't know if they have plans to start the programs, for example, the EDC, which are in an off-site facility and move into this, I do not have one. We could get a.
No, I was just curious, because honestly, it was a great proposal, and it's, you know, our top, some of our top employers are post-secondary educational institutions, right? So this is just one other expansion of that, and I think it's, especially with healthcare issues, it's great to see.
Well, the site, based on the timeline, the site preparation is supposed to begin right now, so
Yeah.
if it's not beginning right now, then
And I think from my perspective, it will always be based on a county basis, you know, and they do need to hear back from the other funders, right? So it's been likely contingent on when they get this to go ahead.
Any other questions or concerns? Yeah, good idea. I have a mover and a seconder, involved at EDC. Robert, mover, Charles. Seconder. Resolved that EDC endorsed the request, this request from Sioux College in the amount of $600,000 from the CDF over 3 years and recommends that City Council approve this request. All in favor? I'm glad and happy that we have a perfect attendance here, because the next matter I'd like to hear from board members is the EDC and CDC joint venture program that we've had some discussion about, and I've looked through Dan Priya at the CDC and looked at the Muskova experience. And we received some material in that regard. And the purpose of discussing it here is to hear from you, and at the same time give you an opportunity to think about what we discussed here today. And hopefully in the next 3 to 4 weeks, we'll have some more substantive particulars with respect to how this program could potentially work for your ultimate approval or change, or whatever you wish to do. What we have here is a plan that will take into account the limited funding and funds that we have in the EDC bank account, and look outward in some manner or fashion to use that money that we have that ultimately will run out because we're no longer funded by any particular entity. And so the thought occurred to some of us on the board to try and use and emulate the program that we now have with the CDC, whereby we put money out, contributed money, and CDC did, to enhance the downtown buildings and to see some of the renovations that were done in the storefronts and so on. That arose as a result of the joint program that we have. We provided payment to the CDC. The CDC receives the applications from the, in that case, the property owners. They evaluate those. We have a representative on that committee that considers that. And then they work out an arrangement with the property owner. And we have a situation where some money that's advanced to them is by way of loan, and some money that's advanced to them is forgiven. So that's the sort of general picture that we have. And we get a report from CDC periodically and every 6 months. Our portion of the investment in that program is that we forgive 50% of the money that we put out over time. And we recover, if all goes well, the other 50% that we have advanced. And obviously you weigh the merits of the application, the trustworthiness of the applicants, and the financial ability of the applicants. So bearing in mind that broad situation, the thought occurred to us, we have some money in the bank, and Rick and his staff are tied up and too busy to handle our administrative stuff insofar as reviewing the applications and so forth. So we reached out to Dan Freya. Dan Freya suggested emulating or using some parts of the Muskoka plan. And the way the Muskoka plan works is basically set out in the material we set out to you. They have awards of $250,000. So they review the proposals that are made by entrepreneurs, and they pick whatever one that they want to go with, and they advance that to that company, and they work out a financial contract with that successful applicant, whereby the Muskoka EDC is able to get either equity in the business or repayment of the money that they advanced in whole or in part, and it keeps sort of generating cash flow for the development corporation, and at the same time it helps out the entrepreneurs. They are focusing in the Muskokas to try and attract people working from home in the technology field primarily. And so if we have any interest in doing that, we may want to, look at that area as well, because it looks like a lot of people are moving to St. Joe's Island and on the waterfront in Sault Ste. Marie, but they're able to work from home at Fuller and Park. And it's the kind of resident that you want in the community, because normally they have a significant amount of back flow from whatever they're involved in. So I'm asking you as to whether or not you're in favor of the principle of doing that. And if we are, then the plan would be to have you pass a resolution that would permit us to continue to have meetings and discussions and come back with a draft agreement for your consideration. When we had a conversation, executive committee, Robert had some good ideas, everybody had great ideas. We may want to say we would give a grant and or a loan or whatever combination that we thought appropriate up to a particular amount. Then what Dan says, for every dollar that we could put in, he can match that. And he can go as much as, and that wasn't quite clear, 300,000, 300,000. So if they put up 300,000, we put up 300,000, $600,000, which could have a significant impact to a person who wants to start up whatever he or she may want to do in terms of a business. If and when we get to the point, this is Robert's suggestion, that you have 3 or 4 applicants whose plans or projections and enthusiasm we seem to want to support, we could maybe hire someone who has some special knowledge of that particular area or business to give us their expert opinion in evaluation of the proposal.
Yeah, I think a couple things there. I think that's not so much targeted at a startup. I think the startup stuff is done quite well with Rick's group, right? This is more of the next phase. So they've gotten established, they've got a good idea. So sort of a mid-stage approach, equity partner, hopefully something that supports the balance sheet and ability to It's a business we don't understand. But I think this is a good way to get those businesses that have had great ideas and have gotten started to them where they're actually. So, and this was part of our. Actually, correct.
Thank you for correcting it. Startup, they need the cash to really move forward.
Yeah. Cash hungry business.
I think the very important too is that the way that the downtown initiative was designed is that we could be more flexible with our dollars than the CDC can. Their funding is primarily going to come from Fed work, so they don't have as much flexibility as we do. That's why that 50% that is up to 50% per givable. It's actually only our 50%, so it's 25%. So we can be a bit more creative with money that we supply if we go forward with this, but they can. So.
Yeah, but I don't know that you need to, but I think that's something we can evaluate as well, but we know that it's everybody probably use a grant, but I think that injections in terms of equity in the balance sheet. Ability to further leverage it. Likely. I think that's probably the first.
The benefit of that is that it does replenish itself, right? Which sort of like it keeps the money that we have, which is limited, whole for the foreseeable future if this sort of program continues, as long as they're successful, right?
Generates, well, you may actually create a return, depending on how we structure it. So you may have some losses, some you have some gains.
Is the board evaluate on a case by case basis, or is it how's the vetting process?
I think that's part of the proposal that we come back to the board for consideration, whether it's whether we feel as a board we have the expertise to that determination, or whether we want somebody to.
I envisage a situation, this is subject to comment, criticism, or whatever you wish, and also obviously subject to CDC agreeing with what was suggesting. But I foresee a situation where you have certain time frames within which you review and analyze the proposals and plans of whoever applies for our involvement. And whether it's, 3 months or whatever it is, or whether it's twice a year, you have to put a time frame when certain applications have to be submitted for evaluation. If we go with 300,000 and then CDC gets 300,000, we have that 600,000. The question is, do we use that 600,000 the first year or over 2 or 3 years? Or do we try to spend it all in the first year? That's a matter that's open to discussion or debate.
When we talked to CDC, Dan was saying he wanted either a committee to sit down and kind of put this proposal together based on what their limitations are, and then we can bring back to this board some concrete options for the plan based on the rules. So I think it's going to come down, and you talked about that 1 year, 3 year. If you put all this effort into it, because there's a lot of effort to sit down and make the parameters, it could be at least 2 years, or does it seem doing it for 1 year and going through all the effort? Is it better to go, let's say, over 2 years and see what happens?
Yeah, I'm just trying to give the sort of ideas that we're throwing around
Yeah.
the table at the executive meeting and with Dan Tria. So once we come back with the plan, I'm just giving you some ideas as to what has been discussed and not decided. And then do we say up to a particular amount? Because if you say you're going to make a grant, a loan, or equity participation of 200,000, 250,000, and you analyze and review the project, may have significant merit and potential in terms of expansion and so on, but not worth 250,000 or 200,000. Are you stuck with that payment if that's the basis upon which So whatever amount we agree is the maximum amount. I think Dan Priya agrees that we should say up to, which gives us much more flexibility in terms of how much we dole out to any particular individual or entity. And if 1 year you get 2 good applications, and they're worth 75 or 100,000 in value in terms of participation, and brings value, then you can work around that. So what I'd like from the board is the resolutions authorizing us to set up a committee, and I'm happy to have anyone volunteer to meet with Dan and his people with the view of working out a plan for final approval, and then subject to the lawyers drafting an agreement, a joint venture agreement. So that's the path that I see happen. Well, I'm looking. And
Might be.
I'd like to start with the name for the project. I've been thinking long and hard, and I don't want to call it a grant because that means there's no terms, conditions, and repayment requirement. So I'd say we can grant, but let's start with a name that's accurate and catchy. It's just if you have some names, think about that. And you want to be involved in the committee, by all means, let me know or let us know. And be happy to have, or we can have, you know, our own little meetings before meeting with Dan, so to speak. And have a conversation with them. So, any questions or concerns?
Is the thinking about along sector lines wasn't certainly going to be business for other lines, like we're going to limit it to 200,000. Not going to be going into some big industries, but it's going to be here.
Yeah, I think about it as, you know, you've got this startup entity that's gotten some seed funding. It's got a good idea. And they're now at the next stage of investment. That's good. So you're 200,000 at that point. You can accelerate. So that's it.
Yeah, as larger industries still have access to the HSC and federal, the bigger players, right?
It's rather,
So, going for a name would be pretty much right off in the scope of that. Susan Marie Futures, we'll make them, Susan Marie Support. Sue 4.0. Yeah. I don't know if we were 2.0 or 3.0.
Yeah.
I think 5.0.
Yeah, when this was originally kicked around, I think this idea.
Yeah.
I think we sort of take that down. I don't know that we have to have it specific to what
You look like the guy on
You really interesting, guys.
you know what, that might be an inspiration. A lot of those are. So some of these may need 50,000, I thought was some of them 50,000. Or I get to the number doesn't.
And the end of I'm honestly the next level. You know, you do this and then this is available. If you get it to this point, then it's a bit of a continuum.
That'd be a good way to put it.
Can I have a resolution that the EDC form a committee to participate in discussions with the CDC with the view of establishing a plan or joint venture, should say, establishing a joint venture along the lines of the Muskoka 4.0. At least moved by second by Robert, all in favor? Thank you. Approved.
Joe, I'm happy to be involved.
Okay. Much appreciated. Thank you. What do you think, Tom and Rick? I can hear from you.
Yeah, no, I was interested to read the scope of the materials and, I think anything we can do to help our business is a good thing. And so probably the next round, as we get into more of the weeds on how it would be structured, on how it would be worked, like we're happy to participate and provide thoughts and ideas on how it would work with our businesses. I think you mentioned earlier, like ideally startup, like we can help them get the grant money and get kind of that going. And then it's that next level, right? I think, as I understand now, you're looking at is kind of they've started, they're going, and now they need some money to inject to help them reach the next level.
Yeah, and the basic premise of the Muskoka plan is that the corporation that advances the funds either ends up with an equity position or they're bought out by the successful entrepreneur who is assisted with the loan. Also they get security as against a building or structure or property. So it's not a freebie, totally. But it's helpful at the time in terms of how to set it up. And so that's a critical part. We'll have to figure out when to have a first meeting. So think about a name. Let us know if you want to participate in the committee amongst ourselves to have a conversation. And come up with our own proposal to Dan. And then we'll come back to the board. Anything left on the agenda? Thank you. We have a schedule for meetings and I hope that we get the same turnout here on in. And if we do circuit, so issue. Too bad we don't have a glass of wine with it or a beer, but that's another issue. We'll be off site someday to do that. That being said, hope we can make those meeting dates.
Is the AGM, are we able to do that? Nice. By Zoom. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I think with any of our meetings now, we're able to bring in any member that wants to attend remotely. I figured a regular meeting, I just didn't know. That was an exception.
I have a mover as seconder that the board meeting is now adjourned. All in favor? Thank you. I will ask for badges for names next meeting so I can.